House are based in LA. And the tip of this is just to take note of the mouse there, and Danger Mouse is the name. But first of all, I'll say good morning. Jem, have you got a heart chakra?
Not last I checked.
Let me just open your mic. That'll help you have chakra. All because of the fabulous, chilled out, happy and educational show. I hope you're having a good Sunday. You just hear the voice of my next guest today, Jem Roberts. Welcome to the show, Jem.
Thank you very much.
I'm so excited to welcome you here. But first of all, let me properly introduce you. You've been a journalist since you were a teen. You're author of several books, historian for the likes of Blackadder. Sorry, I haven't got a clue. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe. You've also just recently been given an award for your most recent book.
No. I've been nominated for an award, but that's the first.
You've most recently been nominated. What? Tell us more about that. And a Soupy Twist, it's called, isn't it, with Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie?
Back in September, yes. My most recent book was the official Fry and Laurie story, and yes, it's just been announced in the last week that it's up for a Chortle Award, and I've never been nominated for anything in my life, so that in itself.
I've already given you that award.
It's as good as, isn't it?
Well, welcome to the show. We're here to talk about another book with your alias, Brother Bernard.
Yeah, Brother Bernard is here with us. I shall speak, he shall speak through me. He's 8,000 years old, so it's fair enough that I speak for him. But Bernard is here with us today.
In delightful, all in green, sage green.
Thank you.
I love a bit of sage green. You've described this book as an insanely overdue treasury. What is it? I know it's called Tales of Britain.
Well, I mean, it exists partly thanks to yourself for supporting it, because it was a crowd-funded book on Unbound for a start. But
and many other people, we should add.
Oh yes, well, yourself, Niels Innes, and Gaiman, Brian Blessed, all sorts of exciting people have helped. So Tony Robinson. So thank you to all of you who've helped it become, to exist in the first place.
It piqued my interest because you told me, or your team said, that there'd never been a collection of Tales of Britain. There's been Irish collections, Welsh collections, Scottish collections, English, and so forth.
Well, technically, I should try and keep it really, really short, but it's 15 years in the making, really, because I'm from Ludlow, which is halfway down the Welsh border, as you might know, and if I was born 20 miles west, then I would be Welsh, and if I was born 20 miles east, then I'd be Brummie, So I don't really believe in borders. Borders were lines drawn on maps by rich white men several centuries ago, So we're just this island up in northwest Europe. Yeah. And yet there are so many English collections, Welsh collections, Scottish collections. Every single county you go to, little local indie bookshops, they have little county collections. But I started having nephews 15 years ago. I've got two older brothers. One moved up to Yorkshire and one down to Dorset. And I thought it'd be nice for my nephews to be reminded of their Shropshire roots, Yeah. So I started retelling these stories then. And I just thought I'd go into a shop and I'd buy a collection of British folk tales for my nephew. Yeah. I just thought that would be nice. And I thought I'd be choosing between 5 or 6. And there's literally nothing.
Because we're talking about a time when it predates Britain. Britain was Brythonic. It was Welsh, really, wasn't it?
Well, it's about 8,000 years ago that Doggerland got flooded and we became an island, basically. And ever since then, this is just people have come to this blob of land and tried to set up their own lives and become British. And some of them brought their own stories with them. Some of them created their own stories when they were here. But that's where all of these stories come from thousands and thousands of years of immigration, whether it's the Beaker people from God knows when, several thousand years ago, or the Windrush generation 50 years ago. These are all people who have come to this island to become British and to share in our national treasury of stories.
But these books that you've included are, what's the youngest story that you've got in the book?
The youngest story? That's quite complex. I think really it's the Loch Ness Monster.
Okay.
It was basically invented in the 30s, really. There was sort of reference to her before then, but it's sort of a 1930s invention, really, the Loch Ness Monster.
Well, we're going to be talking about loads of different stories, but the first one, give us a nutshell story, and because there's so many wonderful characters in the book, on the subject of the mouse.
Oh, the mouse, indeed. Well, it's a good Welsh story as well. You'll have to check me on some of the pronunciations, but there aren't many. That's the other thing. When I started looking into folktales, there's a lot of similar stuff, a lot of ghost stories, so many black dog ghost things, and loads of saints. And I really try to avoid having too many saint stories. But this is a story of Saint Caddoc in South Wales. And it's about a story when he was young, before he was a saint. And it was a time of famine in the Brecon Beacons, basically. Nothing was growing in the fields, and he was being bored at school by his teacher Bachan. He was an intelligent young man, Saint Caddoc, and then suddenly a mouse appeared in the classroom, and all that. And
this is Brother Bernard talking now, right?
I'm afraid he's here with us, yes, indeed. But suddenly the teacher Bachan obviously jumped up on like a Tom and Jerry moment, jumped onto his desk and said, "Oh my God, help! Get rid of the mouse! Get rid of the mouse!" And Caddoc noticed that this little mouse was actually quite plump, and all the cows in the fields and every other animal and all the people had ribs sticking out and they hadn't eaten for days. And he noticed that the mouse had obviously been eating something. So he tied a little bit of twine to the mouse's tail and then followed it all the way past the village of Llanspithed.
Perfect.
Thank you very much indeed. And he noticed that this mouse disappeared into a little hole in the hill, and he started to dig, and he found this ancient granary store. Who knows how long it had been there? Maybe it was Roman, we don't know where it came from, but he found acres and acres of oats and grain and wheat, and that was enough to feed the whole village for a very long time until the harvest came in.
There was a tailor had a mouse, hi-diddle-um, come fiddle. They lived together in one house, hi-diddle-um, come fiddle and see. Hi-diddle-um, come over the lea, hi-diddle-um, come fiddle.
I just love that song. It's Shirley Collins, of course, and the tailor and the mouse, my guest today. I think I'll just call you Brother Bernard. Is that okay?
Why not?
I know it's radio, but he's got a green velvet floor-length cape on and all sage green shirt and trousers, so very dapper indeed. The Tales of Britain cover places such as Caithness, Shropshire, we mentioned Oxfordshire, Yorkshire, the Highlands of Scotland, Cornwall, Devon, Dinas Emrys, Hereford, Leicester. It's just fabulous because you have the stories and then you have a little box, and in the box it says where you can go and visit today.
Yes, well, that was part of the idea. It's like a road map of British stories, and the idea was it's not for children, it's for everyone, in the same way that The Simpsons or Pixar movies, it's not aimed at children. It is on the mythology section. But the idea was really, what really excited me was the idea that you could read it at a bedtime on a Tuesday, and then on Sunday afternoon, everyone piles into the car, and you go off and drive, and you actually be there.
That's brilliant.
And it makes me think, if I was a child, to actually be in the place and go, oh, that's the hill where the giant, fell asleep and everything. It makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, so that's what you can do. It's a tourist guide.
There's a tail key here then, so you've got keys for various stories, because some of these ancient stories really are quite peculiar. So some of the keys are like, one is weird, one is sick, one is tragic, one's bloody, one's rude, one's supernatural, one so you get the...
Well, we were discussing with Unbound ways of allowing people to... Because these are to be enjoyed aloud. We do live shows, which hopefully we'll be able to mention in a bit, but these are to be shared and enjoyed around the campfire aloud. But you never know. Some stories do have adult themes, so to speak. So we thought it would kind of empower people to know that they were reading the right story for the right audience. If we just had a little guide like that.
Apples.
Oh, apples. Well, I shall try and keep this story nice and short for you, but it's quite complex. It's also a Christmas story. I hope nobody out there worries too much about Christmassy stuff in the middle of spring. Come
closer to the radio. It's like old wireless times, isn't it? Come closer to the wireless.
Well, it's difficult to place this story because it's basically set wherever they take their apples seriously. So I moved to Somerset, so it could be a Somerset tale, where there's a lot of... Hereford has a lot of wonderful orchards where they make cider, and obviously Kent, over the other side of the country, they consider themselves the Garden of England as well. So it's up to you where this story is set. But very, very briefly, there are these two brothers called Ned and Ted, and for some reason, at this time in this place, the younger brother used to inherit. So they had this old crumble-down farm, and Ned was the one who inherited and was very cruel to his older brother Ted, who was very kind and looked after the animals. And it was Christmas, and there had been word that there was some treasure somewhere on the farmland, and there was an old idea that the animals in the barn, there was an old donkey and an old ox, and they were the ones who knew where this treasure was hidden. And so Ned told his brother Ted to get off to bed early on Christmas Eve and leave him to find out this secret from the two animals. So Ted did his usual thing of a Christmas Eve by going out to the orchard, and he made a little fire, and he got some scrumpy cider and put it on the fire and mulled it up. And then he did what people still do to this day and wassailed the apple trees in the orchard and poured this mulled cider down into the roots of the old apple tree on the farm. And it rustled and it creaked and it became the apple tree man with a great big rosy head and face and laughing fit to burst and wishing him a Merry Christmas. And he said to him, "Ted, you've been very good. I've been watching you look after the donkey and the ox. And so look down in my roots, mate." And Ted looked down to the roots and he found this old pot full of Roman coins. And the apple tree man told him to rush it home and stick it in his sock drawer and go to bed because it's Christmas. And magic happened at midnight. And as midnight struck, Ned finally arrived at the old crumbled down stables, and he heard the donkey and the ox talking to each other, just laughing about Ned. He thinks he's gonna get that treasure, but he don't know that the treasure's already been found and whisked away. And Ned was so shocked, his hair went white, and he learned his lesson just like Scrooge. Let's put it that way.
Jemima, the dancer from Soho, was making her way down the lane. Baxter from Harrow had fruit on his barrow. He sold it for the loving for gain. Cocksparrow apples, red and
Ian Jury's apples, since we were talking about the apple tree man with my guest today, journalist and author Jem Roberts. You just mentioned that the sort of tone of Brother Bernard is quite often, one of your heroes is Rick Mayall.
Oh, there's so many inspirations to get in there for this. I should say, I mean, first of all, the book is dedicated to Terry Jones because he was very helpful in the early stages of writing the book. We went out to lunch, we were friends and everything, and he was a wonderful storyteller himself. And that's also partly why Brother Bernard exists, because Terry Jones used to do books as Bert Fegg, and his fairy book, he was always under a pseudonym. But I've always done comedy. I'm a comedian myself. As you can see, all my books are about comedy. So my retellings are inspired by Terry Jones, by the storyteller Jim Henson. That whole series is a huge inspiration. And also the excitement of Tony Robinson when he did Odysseus and everything. I was the target audience for Tony Robinson's series, so it's nice that he's supported it. And finally, Grim Tales with Rick Mayall. And this has been 15 years in the works. Yeah. And there was a point where top of the list of to do for, I think, 2014 was contact Rick Mayall's people about performing Tales of Britain. Yeah. And then a few months later we lost him forever, but hopefully his spirit is still in there.
Jem, I did mention before you came on live, Celts are Swiss. It's not quite accurate, but the origins of Celts, tell me.
Well, it's so difficult because the whole idea of the Celts is such a Victorian idea. A lot of that stuff that we think is ancient it's just been very simplified. But basically we are talking about Germanic peoples from Middle Europe, from all over the place, who came to this country, be they Saxon from later or Celtic. They're all just labels that we put on different groups that came to the country. Right?
And the other one that like my eyebrow kind of raised, the name Scott comes from Ireland.
Well, there's the old story that it's to do with an Egyptian princess called, I think, Scoti. And, I mean, apart from else, we know that sort of genetically and historically that Northern Ireland and Scotland basically did a great big swapsy several centuries ago. So a lot of people in southern Scotland have Irish roots and vice versa. So where does anyone come from? This is why, I mean, one of the real spurs of this, the idea of native English. The English are one of the last groups to come to this island, for goodness sake.
Also in the book, you've got the story of Gellert, which, we associate with North Wales. But actually, there's many stories of Gellerts around the world. They might not be with a dog, but they'll be with a snake or a mongoose.
Well, this is...
Well, you're not going to blast me live on air now, are you?
No. It's a little bit of a sore point with me. It's wonderful that folklore is studied in an academic way. I'm from Bath, that's where I live now, and they have folklore studies and all this kind of thing, which is great. And there's been some wonderful academics who've supported the book. But I think that it can be quite reductive, and that was one of the reasons for doing this book, was just to get the stories out there. Because for me, it's like somebody 3,000 years from now saying, well, we know the story of President Lincoln being shot and assassinated. And then we've got this other story of President Kennedy being shot. They can't both be true because these are both stories about presidents being assassinated.
So you think Gellert... Well, what do you think?
Well, Gellert is a difficult one because we know it breaks my heart.
That was made up.
Well, as a little boy, I went to visit Gellert's grave, and it really touched me. So to know that basically it was a publican there who made the whole thing up. But you need a bit of willing suspension of disbelief for these things.
This is the beauty of stories, isn't it? It's a story. Anyway, loads of people getting in touch. Ian in Worcester Marches. Enjoying the show again. Does Jem have any stories about 11th century Edric the Wild from Shropshire? He sounds a fascinating character. I love that, Edric the Wild.
I think he does get a mention in the very last story, funnily enough. I mean, I should explain as well, this is hopefully going to last for the rest of my life because I'm still adapting these stories. I mean, do go out and buy the book because they're all in there. There's 77 stories, but I'm still doing more, and so hopefully there'll be deluxe, beautifully illustrated editions in the future, and I can do the full story of Edric the Wild then.
And you can go and see Jem live at many of the festivals this summer.
Oh, yes.
He's also, before then, if you just can't wait, The Owl and Hitchhiker. You're appearing on Monday the 25th of March at 7 p.m. And the book, I should mention, is called Tales of Britain by Brother Bernard, as told to Jem Roberts, and it's out on Unbound. One more, bears.
Oh yes, bears. Well, this was the surprise, again, when I was looking around the country trying to find all these stories, the idea being that there'll be at least one story within 50 miles of everyone on the island, so they can go and visit them and everything. And just also trying to find the best one. So you have King Arthur, you have Robin Hood, and Lady Godiva, and Tristan and Isolde. They're all in there, and Dick Whittington, Tom Thumb. Shut up, Jem, I could go on forever. But the excitement was, I mean, for instance, I was looking for one for, I won't go into this, but one for the Isle of Wight. I couldn't find anything for the Isle of Wight, and then I discovered Three Little Pigs. It was based, the oldest version of Three Little Pigs, it takes place at Shanklin Fair on the Isle of Wight. And similarly, the oldest version we can find of the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears comes from Britain. It's actually not that old. It's only a couple of 100 years old. But I never understood that story, because who on earth are we really behind in that story? Goldilocks, this housebreak, I'd never understood it until you look into the older versions and you discover that before Goldilocks there was Silverhair, which is a weird old lady who broke in and stole the porridge, and before even that, which is the version we have in this book, it was a fox called Padfoot, Stinkfoot, I can't remember off the top of my head, Scrapefoot.
The book, as I said, Tales of Britain, this is most definitely to be continued. The artist is Toby Hay, and the track you just heard, Bears Dance, from an album called The Longest Day, released last year. Woody Tony, good morning, sir, asking and wanted me to ask Jem about Spring-Heeled Jack. Who is this bouncy monster? Jem says that'll be in the next book. You'll find out some more. Ian, Janinka Diverio as well, such an interesting interview about photos. It's absolutely bursting with wonderful, wonderful stuff, including, as I mentioned, tips of where to go to see sort of the landscape or the castles or the places or orchards and all the rest of it. And I didn't even have time to talk about giants or pigs or dragons, but I know that there's mention of Rhiannon in this book as well, from the Mabinogion, who also it wasn't just about Wales, it was across all the borders, including France, Ireland, all the rest of it. Anyway, after this, we're going to just have a lovely half an hour where we're going to hear the voice of Simon Bar.